Hello chess friends and welcome to Zadov's chess channel and welcome to a very cool game from the Computer Rapid Chess Championship that's going on now these days. I think the result is clear. Stockfish has a comfortable 16-point lead in front of every other engine. LilaC0 has 79 points, Stockfish NNE has 95 points, and this Komodo Dragon has 78 points, so it's really wild. This is not the Stockfish 13 version that has been released now recently. It's the Stockfish version that has been released in the early days of the February of this year. Still, it's of course a very strong engine. We can see that LilaC0 and the Komodo Dragon don't have chances to catch up with the Stockfish NNE. I decided to show a really great game from this Rapid Chess Championship. It was a game played by Stockfish NNE against Tuflace. This game shows really the attacking skills again by Stockfish NNE, as in this game Stockfish would sacrifice the rook for the exchange in such an early stage of the game. It's really wild. This move really surprised me. After that move, Stockfish got really a nice central pawns from pre-prepared. This is really a beautiful chess game. So as usual, we have the sound, so round one and fight. So let's go. E4. C5 by Tuflace. We have C3, the Alpin variation. The main goal of the Alpin is of course C3 D4, getting the pawn central control. Then we would have in some occasions even the opportunity to play D5 or E5 to grabbing some space in the center. So the main goal is simply a space advantage by white. The bad thing about this setup is of course we have taken a natural square for the knight. We would love to have of course the knight on C3, then control also the center with our piece, but simple as that. This move C3 has its advantages, also its disadvantages. So here we have D6 D4, knight to D7, because if D takes C5, then we could recapture with the knight and attack the pawn. So far white has to leave now the tension in the center. We have knight to F3, of course, development, and now E6. This is now, I like always to call it, maybe you see that it's not called now in some opening books like this, but I like to always call this setup the French Sicilian setup, because we have played E6 and we have played C5. In some occasions we could also break through with the move D5. The problem now for white is advancing the pawn is not so powerful, because we can play C takes D4, C takes D4. You see after D takes E5, D takes E5, white would be left with an isolated pawn, and it could be a long-term weakness. So that's why breaking through is not a possibility. Even D5 is not an option, because E takes D5, E takes D5, and queen to E7 could lead also into simplified line. Maybe knight to E7 is a possibility, G6, bishop to G7, going into sort of a Benoni structure, because we would then have D6, E5, really a pawn structure like in the Benoni. But the problem, I think, in this particular scenario is that white would lose, I think, a tempo, because we have already played with our C pawn, and then we would have to fix the position further with the move C4. So again, loss of tempo, simply because you could have played this C4 anyway. So that's why I don't think that white should push here in the center immediately. White has to keep the position, keep the tension in the center like this here. Stockfish and E tried bishop to D3. Queen to C7, we have castle, knight to F6, so you see the place it's taken all over here, the square E5, so E5 is not a possibility anymore. We have queen to E2. Now finally Stockfish and E prepares maybe the E5 move, and now we have bishop to E7. A4. This move you'll see many times in this kind of structures, because it's obvious that the only side that black could have an advantage is of course the queen side, with A6 B5, breaking through maybe even with B4, even in some occasion after B5, maybe even to break through with C4. So that's why this A4 is a prophylactic idea. We're waiting what's going to happen on the queen side, because if A6 happens immediately, then we could paralyze the position with the move A4. That's A5. That's the main positional goal of this A4 move. So it's a preparation to simply block the whole queen side. So castling play by Tuflace. We have rook to E1, centralizing the rook. Of course, we have A6, and now bishop to D2. Of course, B5 so far it's not possible, but as I said, as a long-term plan, it could work simply for black. So here C takes D4. C takes D4, and now after E5 we have reached really the critical moment of the game. Here rook to C1, played by Stockfish and NNE. Here we have queen to D8, and now D5. We said that the main goal of the Alpin variation is to get this space advantage in the center. So you see we have now an advanced pawn, which creates really a comfortable game for white. But now comes the move knight to c5, and here we have reached really the critical moment of the game. Here Stockfish and E really played an outstanding rook sacrifice. We have rook to c5, really well done. So we'll get that really this lasting Mortal Kombat sound. Rook to c5, after d takes c5, you see Stockfish has some kind of a compensation, has here the centralized pawn. And the cool part is we have now two connected pawns in the center. These two pawns are restricting this minor piece ability to play this bishop, this knight, and also the light square bishop here are simply out of game. Here rook to e8, a great counterattack now by Stockfish. Is trying to get some kind of an activity on the e file because the queen is still there. There are maybe some attacking opportunities with knight takes d5. After e takes d5, you see the e file could get opened, and you don't want to have the queen, of course, on the same file. But here Stockfish and E played a really calm game. Knight to c3 first, developing all of our minor pieces. If you try here bishop to d6, it's not so good. You get knight to c4. Again, this bishop gets challenged, and we would then even have the opportunities to play here the move e5. If you try bishop to f5 to maybe attack further e4 weakness, we could fix the position, I think, with the move f3. Everything is glued together. b5 is not a possibility. We have a powerful control of that square, so nothing can happen on the queen side. And this centralization, this centralized pieces, I think, with the support of this centralized pawns, give white again such a pleasant game. So here after the move knight to c3, we have bishop to d7, knight takes d7, knight takes d7, and now f4. Here Stockfish and E creates a central pawn storm. The main goal now is to connect the pawns on the 5th rank, play something like e5, and then these two pawns, the e5 pawn and d5 pawn, would really restrict here the four very important squares for the minor pieces of blacks, would create really such a great space advantage. This black's pieces would be simply paralyzed. So here bishop to f6. Here we have rook to d1. Stockfish and he is also placing the rook on the file where black's queen is. If anything gets cleared, then you could have again also some trouble here from black's perspective. Bishop to d4, king to h1, and now knight to b6, and here comes queen to e1. If we try a5, here you see now the importance of the move queen to e1. Queen to e1 is very important because if you kick away, for instance, the knight with a5, it seemed to me, at least in the beginning, as a natural move for white, kicking away simply. Then you get bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, and then you get knight to d5. The problem is now after potential bishop to c4, counter-attacking maybe on the d file, you get knight to c3, and that's the main issue. You can maybe trap the queen, but also your queen is hanging on e2, so that's why you have to retreat now to e1. Now this tactic doesn't work, so here bishop to c3 wouldn't work because after bishop to c3, bishop takes c3, and now if you try knight to d5, you get bishop to c2 or bishop to c4, and simply your piece is hanging on the d file, and black would lose too much of the decisive material. So you see how important it was to get the queen out of the range of the knight, because this tactic simply was very dangerous. Knight to c3 and then knight to e2. So after bishop to c3, okay, here Stockfish grabs another pawn, but here finally this idea e5. e5 was our main goal. Queen to d5, I'm pointing out, is not a possibility. Bishop to h7 will happen, you lose the queen on the d file, so that's why here Stockfish tried knight to c3, b takes c3, but still look at this position, this centralized pawns. We have still the same pawn count. We have 6 pawns for white on the board, but also 6 pawns for black on the board. But this centralized pawns are really incredible. As I said, getting this rook sacrifice in the beginning was really great by Stockfish, and in e after b takes c3, we have queen to d7 played by Stockfish, and now h3, preventing this queen to come actively into the game. Queen to g4 could be a possibility. So here queen to a4, queen to d2, we have b5. Stockfish is also creating some spaces here on the queen side, and now d6. You don't want to, of course, lock your light square bishop. This light square bishop is very important, so you have to take care of your pawns. The pawns should be on dark squares because now we have opportunities not immediately, but as a long-term plan, bishop to e4, bishop to f5. So you see these pawns are building a chain on dark squares, and our bishop is of course attacking the light squares. That's how you should play with your bishop combined with your pawn. So rook from a to d8, we have bishop to f5, and now queen to c4, played by Stu Plays, and now d7. d7 is a great move. If you try here rook to e7, that wasn't played in the game, then you have queen to d6. That's the main issue here. After something like queen to e2, we can immediately take, although this idea queen to d1 comes with a check, but here king to h2, and you don't have anything more. You have maybe rook to f8, but now e6 is simply winning the game. What you do, you cannot pass through. We would then have two connected pawns. Here queen to c5 would be a possibility, then e7 e8, so it would be game over. If you take, then of course bishop takes e6, rook, king to h8 has to be played, and we can simply take out the rook. So if you try of course rook to f7, then queen to e8, again it's checkmate. So really wild stuff how this bishop can come very active into the game. After king to h2, you see it's simply game over. It's a lost game for black. So after the move d7, rook to f8 was played by Stu Plays. We have queen to e3. We're preparing again the move e6. This move is our main goal. Here in the game, queen to a4 was played, rook to d6. You see Stockfish and Nxe is using every new best piece on the board. b4, it comes too late because now e6 is simply too much to handle here for black. f takes e6, queen to e6, king to h8 was played, and now queen to e7, attacking the rook. Here queen to b5 was played. Queen to f8 is not working immediately. It's a bad choice here for white. It cannot be played immediately because after rook f-take we can maybe promote, but the problem is now this intermezzo, queen to f1, king to h2, and now you get the check, and we can take out the bishop and still protect our pawn on f8. So it's not a possibility, but that's actually the main tactical goal of white. So queen to f8 followed with d8, so that's the main goal, but it cannot be played immediately. So after queen to b5, so far Stu Plays found good counterattacks, but it's simply a bad game anyway. Bishop to d3, we have c4, bishop to e4, queen to h5, and now comes this idea, queen takes f8. Now this tactic doesn't work anymore. Rook to f8, d8, queen to d8, and queen to d8 for promotion, rook to e8, and now bishop to c6, attacking the rook. You have to do something, and now queen to e7. You see the main goal is now to activate all of our pieces. It's of course a completely winning game here for white. White has an extra bishop. b3, we have rook to d8, we have h6, creating some breathing spaces, but now bishop to e4, cutting off this very important square for the king. Here we have b2, we have rook to d6, we have a5, now king to h2, we have a4, bishop to b1, a3, and now queen to e4, preparing checkmate. You have to play here simply g6, and now queen to d4. There's nothing that can be done if you try here. Rook to g7, then you have rook to d8, it's simply creating the check, or maybe even better, rook to d7, pinning. So that was actually the line that was played in the game, and here queen to e5 was played. Here queen to e5, we have a2, and here queen to g7, simple checkmate. So okay, really wild stuff. Getting this positional sacrifice in such an early stage of the game, really great tactics here in the beginning. Let's see this again. So let's go back to so knight to c5, so rook takes c5, b takes c5, and now knight to e5, getting this pawn central control with these two very active pawns with the support of the f pawn. That was simply too much to handle. Incredible game again by Stockfish and Nxe. Really, this game really surprised me, as we have seen many times this tactical ideas, but not in such an early stage of the game, especially against this kind of setups. It was really cool game. I think you can use maybe some of these elements in one of your preparations in the elephant variation. So see, recently I think this elephant variation has been played many times in top grandmaster level. Maybe some of these great players can also use some of these lines. You see, it seems to me that always black has some trouble to develop the minor pieces to activate, to know what to do in the center, because the pawn center control that white builds here is really wild. So it I think was really good game. I hope you enjoyed this game. If you want to see more attacking brilliances like this and some more positional brilliances like this, check out my whole series, the best chess games played by engine. Here's the playlist. And if you want to see maybe humans battling in their best chess games, check out my best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.